Okay, I'd like to talk a little bit about major scale harmony, and I have three basic sheets. One is called Major Scale Harmony 1, and then Major Scale Harmony 2, and then 3. This is in Major Scale Harmony 1, I talk about, I write out the major scale in C, and that's all natural notes. Like if I do it on two different strings, it's like C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Or I can play a convenient pattern starting with the second finger. 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. Pretty simple scale, but also complex in many different ways. When we think about Western music, that's European music, that's where harmony and development came in with the major scales. Harmony comes from a scale. So we have a single note scale. In European music, we think of what we call tertial harmony, which is harmony in thirds. Now, what is a third? Like if I go from C up to E, that's a third, from C to E. You know, it's sort of like the Sound of Music song. That's the second note to the fourth note. So the first note to the third note is a third, it's a major third, and the second note to the fourth note of the scale is a minor third. What's the difference? A major third, and you should know this, is two whole steps. If I go whole step, that's C to E is a major third. Now if I go D up to F, you go a whole step and a half step. So that's whole step, half step. And that's a minor third. Now if we compare a major third and a minor third off the same note C, C to E natural is a major third. C to E flat is a minor third. You hear the difference, right? It's kind of shocking if you're thinking a major scale and suddenly you hit that minor third. It's a little bit shocking, the difference. This is a major third played together as a chord, and this is a minor third. So major third would be third and second fingers, and then minor third is third and first finger. But if we played them melodically, that's a major third, that's a minor third. Okay? So you have to understand a major third is two whole steps, a minor third is a step and a half, a whole step and a half step. Okay, so and that is what comprises all harmony that's in thirds. And I can play the whole scale in thirds, but we'll talk about more of that later on. And actually in the second line of this sheet, and you can get a copy of this sheet, but it's a major scale harmonized in thirds. So it's C and E, D and F, E and G, F, A, and so on. So, and then the next thing is to have the scale harmonized a third on top of a third. So you go from C to E to F to G, and go C, E, G. And that's a triad. So if we add a third on top of a third, we call that a triad, and it's comprised of a root, a third, and a fifth. So in this case, It's the first, third, and fifth notes of the C major scale. C, D, E, F, G. C, E, G is the triad. And but if I start on the second note of the C scale, like the Sound of Music song, but if I go D, F, A, like that, that's the root, third, and fifth of the D minor chord, which is off the second tone of the C major scale. So I'm playing the second tone, the fourth tone, and the sixth tone of the C major scale. But within the triad, we still call the first note of the triad the root, and then the third and the fifth, even though it's not the first, third, and fifth notes of this scale of C. It's the second, fourth, and sixth notes. And then if we do the third, fifth, and seventh notes, that's E, E, G, B, and that's what we call the three chord, and it also has a root, a third, and a fifth. So there's going to be more details about all of this as we go into other aspects of harmony, but that's, you can do the whole scale harmonized in triads. You just have to play the right notes in the right places. Okay, it's as simple as that. That's all it is. Now, so the other thing about the triad, so you've got a third from the first note to the third of the triad, it's a third. And then you have a third from the second note of the triad to the third note of the triad. Now from the root to that third note of the triad is a fifth. And it's usually a perfect fifth. What we call fifths cannot be major or minor. They're called perfect intervals. When you play two notes in unison, that's called a perfect unison. When you play fifths, those are perfect. Fourths, like the guitar is tuned in fourths, those are perfect fourths. You cannot have a major fourth. Okay? And then octaves, like if I play octaves, those are perfect octaves. Okay? So there are perfect intervals, and then there are some intervals like thirds, which are major and minor. Okay? So I'm kind of jumping around with this theory stuff, but all of this is important. And it's confusing. It's going to be confusing until you get all the pieces of the puzzle, and then everything will start becoming clear. But it'll be a while. You're going to be confused for a while. So now, I'm going to, on the Major Scale Harmony 1 page, the bottom half of the page, we talk about the 4 types of triads. And 3 of those are in the major scale naturally. And then the augmented triad is not in the major scale naturally. But so we have, what I'm going to do is just show you the triad on the first 3 strings. And so when we play a C major, and that's an octave higher than this earlier C major triad I was playing. So I'm putting C up an octave with the third finger, E is with the pinky, and G is with the first finger. C, E, G. Okay, to make that a minor triad, we're going to change the middle note to the 4th fret, 2nd finger. Okay, but the root and the 5th are the same, whether the triad is major or minor. Still has that C and G as the root and fifth of the triad. So I hope you're not totally confused. A triad skips in thirds. You have a root, a third, and a fifth. In a major triad, it's important to understand that the first third is a major third, and then from C to E, and then from E to G is a minor third. So you have a major third followed by a minor third in the full major triad. When you flat the third and make it C, E flat, G, now the thirds are going to be flipped. So we have a minor third from C to E flat, and then from E flat to G, we have a major third. So from the third of the triad to the fifth of the triad, remember we're thinking root, third, fifth, but if we only look at the third and the fifth, that makes a third interval, and it's a major third. So you have minor third followed by major third in the full triad. So a major triad is a major third followed by a minor third, and in a minor triad it's flipped. It's a minor third followed by a major third. Okay? So all those things you want to analyze and study a little bit, but the root to the fifth of both of those triads is rock solid, a perfect fifth. Okay? So those are the first two types of triads, major and minor. And I show you in the charts on this page, like a different place, you can play a C major. I'm not going to go through all those because I don't want to totally confuse you. You could try those later, but I would just work on the first three strings right now. So we have major, and then we have minor. The next type is diminished, and so we flat the fifth. So I'm going to stretch out my first finger, and that's a diminished triad. And if we look at the thirds, from the root to the third, you still have a root, third, fifth, but it's minor third followed by a minor third. So in a diminished triad, it's all minor thirds. Minor third on top of a minor third. And that's just the triad. So so if we take a major triad and make it minor, we're flatting the third. If we make it diminished, we've flat the third and the fifth. Okay? So we have minor third, minor third. Now if we go back to our C major triad, take your time and make the C major triad again. Now if we sharp the fifth, hear that? That's kind of it's almost like a chord that asks a question, like, what's going to be next? See? Often you'll hear it in a chord progression like that. That's a augmented triad. And so remember what the first to the third, was a major third in a major triad. When we augment the fifth, sharp the fifth, we call that augmenting the fifth. We'll have a major third and then also a major third from the third of the triad to the fifth. So from the root of the triad to the third, it's a major third, and from the third of the triad to the fifth, it's also a major third interval, okay? So when we say major third, we're talking about the interval between two notes, All right? So you want to analyze and see the differences and the similarities between the four types of triads. You have major, minor, diminished, and augmented. Okay? Now, I forgot to mention in the diminished triad, if you look at the root of that triad and skip to the fifth, that is a flat fifth, which we call a diminished fifth. Remember, fifths are perfect, and you can't have a minor fifth, but you can have a diminished fifth, and that's where you make the fifth smaller by a half step. You flat the fifth. Now in the major triad, when we sharp the fifth, we call that from the root of the triad to the fifth, we call that an augmented fifth. So you can't have a major or minor fifth, but you can have a perfect fifth, and you can have a diminished fifth, and you can have an augmented fifth, which makes it wider by a half step. So study that, the four types of triads, play the examples on this page. It's kind of complicated, but I think you'll see in the next sheet, when we go through Major Scale Harmony 2, that things will start coming together a little bit. These triads are kind of, it's kind of like taking a word out of context. You know, we're not really putting it in a song or anything. And so it's kind of like sort of, you know, if you just took a word out of the dictionary, you know, like hippopotamus, you know, what about a hippopotamus? What is it? You know, you know. So what is a major triad? What is a minor triad? But triads are the foundation of our harmony in Western European American music. Okay? So that's pretty much all I'm going to say about this. The sheet, you can get it from me, but I'm going to gradually get you into this is what I call nuts and bolts theory. And it's very important to have a foundation of our nuts and bolts, our basic theory, before we can understand how to jam on a Dorian mode or something like that. So, you know, eventually we're going to, there's two types of theory, I think, you know, kind of the theory that's kind of boring, but it's structural theory. I call it nuts and bolts theory. And then there's jam theory, you know, like to jam over a chord progression. And that's a little more fun, but we'll get to all of that. And then they're in college theory, and this was confusing to me. When I took a college theory course, I thought, well, I'm going to learn all about scales I can jam with, you know, and wrong. What we did was we took Bach chorales and we analyzed them. So that's a different kind of theory there too. You take a composition that maybe Bach wrote or Beethoven piano sonata, and you pick it apart and analyze all the chords and analyze the form, and that's more like institutional kind of theory that you would have in a college theory course. So usually first semester theory is like nuts and bolts, learning what triads are and all that. But then you get into analysis of compositions that the great composers have written. And there's a lot to be gotten out of that kind of theory as well. But we won't get into that in relation to the guitar. We'll do the nuts and bolts theory and then the fun jamming jamming with chord progressions, learning blues and all that stuff, Mixolydian modes, Dorian modes, and so have fun. Like this video and like my John Hedger Guitar Studio YouTube channel and my Facebook page. Thank you so much.